The Lekki night air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, burning cigars, and freshly poured champagne. Inside a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Atlantic, the elite of Lagos gathered for the biggest party of the season. Laurel stood in the center, dressed in a shimmering gold gown that clung to her curves, her brown eyes scanning the room with the precision of a hunter. She was no ordinary girl. Just 3 years ago, she had arrived in Lagos with nothing but a battered suitcase and dreams too big for her tiny hometown. Now she was rubbing shoulders with billionaires, politicians, and celebrities. But tonight was different. Tonight, a powerful enemy lurked in the shadows, waiting to strike. Hello, please share, like, comment on this story and subscribe to our YouTube channel to enable us grow. And thanks for showing us your support for this channel. Also hit the notification bell to get notified when a new video drops. God bless you. Whispered conversation between 2 men caught her attention. She thinks she owns this town, one sneered. By morning, she'll be begging for mercy. Laurel sipped her drink, unfazed. If she had learned anything in Lagos, it was that power was never given, it was taken. Suddenly, a text flashed on her phone. Run. Now. Her heart pounded as she turned, locking eyes with a man she thought was long gone. Desmond, her past lover and her biggest mistake. Desmond's smirk was laced with malice as he approached. Laurel, he drawled. Long time no see. Laurel maintained her composure, but inside, a storm raged. Desmond had been the first man to show her the dark side of power. The lies, the betrayals, the hidden knives. And now he was here in her world. What do you want? She asked, voice steady. He chuckled, swirling the whiskey in his glass. You took something from me. It's time to return the favor. Laurel's breath hitched. She had spent years erasing his existence from her life, rebuilding her empire. But Desmond was proof that the past never stayed buried. As he leaned closer, his voice dropped to a whisper. The game is over, darling. By sunrise, Lekki will know your secrets. The room spun. If Desmond had evidence of her past, the things she had done to survive, her empire would crumble. She had 2 choices, fight or flee. Laurel's hands clenched around her phone as she glanced at the exit. Desmond's words echoed in her mind. If he had proof of her past, her reputation was at stake. She had spent years climbing the social ladder, burying the girl who once sold akara by the roadside. Now she was a queen in Lekki, but one wrong move could send her crashing down. She exhaled, forcing herself to remain calm. She turned to Desmond with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You talk too much for a man who used to beg me for favors, she whispered, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne mixed with whiskey made her stomach churn. Before he could react, she slipped something into his pocket, a tracking device. If he wanted war, she would give him one. Without another word, she turned and sashayed toward the exit, but as she stepped outside, a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of her. The doors flew open and masked men jumped out. Laurel's heart pounded as strong hands grabbed her, shoving her into the vehicle. She struggled, kicking and screaming, but a cloth was pressed against her face. The scent of chloroform clouded her senses. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was a voice murmuring, "Boss wants her alive." Hours later, she woke up in a dimly lit warehouse, her wrists bound. The cold metal of the chair bit into her skin. Across from her sat a man she had only seen in whispers, Chief Otunba, a shadowy billionaire with ties to both government and crime. He smiled, his gold teeth glinting under the flickering light. Laurel, he mused, you've been playing in the big leagues, but you forgot one thing. Power is borrowed, never owned. Laurel straightened, refusing to show fear. If you wanted me dead, I wouldn't be here, she said, tilting her chin up. Otunba chuckled. Smart girl. Now tell me, where is the ledger? The blood drained from her face. The ledger. A book containing the secrets of Lekki's elite. A weapon that could bring down the most powerful men in Lagos. She had hidden it years ago, knowing it was her only insurance against people like Otunba. But now the past had caught up with her. Laurel's mind raced. The ledger was her greatest weapon, a book containing the dirty secrets of Lagos elite. Money laundering, illicit deals, political assassinations. She had acquired it by accident when she was still climbing the ladder. It had saved her life once. Now it could be her downfall. Otunba leaned forward, his thick fingers drumming against the table. You see, my dear, men like me don't ask twice. Where is the ledger? Laurel forced a smirk, hiding the panic bubbling inside her. If I had it, do you think I'd still be alive? Others want it too. If you kill me, you'll never find it. Otunba's eyes darkened. Then let's hope you find it before I run out of patience. He gestured, and one of his men struck Laurel across the face. Pain exploded through her jaw, but she refused to scream. If they thought they could break her, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Hours later, Laurel sat alone in the dark warehouse. Her wrists bruised but her spirit unshaken. The door creaked open, and a familiar face stepped in. Jide, a man she once trusted, now Otunba's right-hand man. He crouched beside her, his expression unreadable. Laurel, you always did bite off more than you could chew, he murmured. She glared. You used to be different, Jide. His jaw tightened. Things change. But I can help you for a price. Laurel narrowed her eyes. What do you want? Jide smirked. A share of whatever power you're sitting on. Give me half, and I'll get you out of here alive. Laurel studied him, her mind spinning. Betrayal ran deep in Lekki, but survival meant making unlikely deals. The problem was she knew Jide well. He was a snake. The question was, could she tame him before he bit her? Laurel met Jide's gaze, searching for any sign of sincerity. He had been one of the few people she once trusted, back when they were nobodies fighting for survival in Lagos. But power changed people, and she knew better than to trust blindly. Fine, she whispered. Get me out and we'll talk. Jide smirked, cutting the ropes binding her. Smart girl. They moved quickly through the warehouse's dark corridors, but as they neared the exit, Laurel's instincts screamed trap. Jide was too calm, too confident. Just as they reached the metal doors, she caught the reflection of a gun in his hand. Without thinking, she spun, elbowing him hard in the ribs. The gun clattered to the floor. Laurel didn't hesitate. She grabbed it and turned it on him. Who sent you? She demanded. Jide chuckled despite the pain. Laurel, you never did learn. Everyone in Lekki is playing their own game. You're just a pawn. Laurel pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Me. Jide lunged. Laurel barely dodged Jide's attack, slamming the gun into his face. Blood spattered as he staggered back, cursing. Before she could make another move, a slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Otunba stepped into the dim light, flanked by his guards. He was grinning. Well, well, he mused. You really are entertaining. Laurel's pulse pounded. This was never an escape, it was a test. Otunba gestured to his men, and they grabbed Jide, dragging him away. You see, I knew he'd betray you. But I wanted to see what you'd do about it. Laurel forced herself to stay calm. So what now? You kill me. Otunba chuckled. No, you're more useful alive. You want your freedom. Bring me the ledger. Laurel exhaled. This was her only way out. She had to find the ledger before Otunba lost patience. But there was just one problem. She had no idea where it was. Laurel had no choice but to play along with Otunba. As she was escorted out of the warehouse, her mind raced. The ledger was real, but the problem was, she didn't have it anymore. 3 years ago, she had hidden it with someone she once trusted. Someone she had sworn never to see again. Miriam. The name tasted bitter in her mouth. Miriam had been more than a friend. She was family, a sister in struggle. But betrayal had torn them apart. And now Laurel had to face her again. She slipped into the back seat of a black SUV. Her hands still shaking from the encounter with Jide. As the car sped through the Lekki night, she pulled out her phone and typed a message she never thought she'd send. Meet me. One last time. She hesitated, then pressed send. The abandoned beach house in Aja was exactly how Laurel remembered it. Silent, eerie, a graveyard of old memories. She waited, heart pounding, until she heard footsteps. Miriam stepped out of the shadows, her arms crossed. She had changed. Her once soft face was now hardened, her eyes colder. You have some nerve calling me, Miriam said. Laurel didn't waste time. Where is it? Miriam scoffed. So that's why you're here. After everything. Laurel's patience thinned. I don't have time for this. Otunba wants the ledger. If I don't get it, I'm dead. Miriam exhaled sharply. You think I kept it? Laurel's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Miriam stepped closer, her voice a whisper. You're in more danger than you realize. The ledger isn't where you left it. Someone else has it. Laurel's breath caught. If Miriam didn't have it, who did? Laurel's heart pounded as Miriam's words sank in. If you don't have it, then who does? She demanded. Miriam hesitated. I gave it away. To someone who could protect it. Laurel grabbed her arm. Who? Miriam sighed. His name is Chucks. Runs with a different crowd now. Dangerous people. Laurel's stomach twisted. She knew him. Once a street hustler. Now a ruthless businessman controlling half of Lekki's underground world. Miriam's eyes darkened. If you go after him, you better be ready. Chucks doesn't forgive, and he never forgets. Laurel straightened. She had come too far to turn back now. I'll handle him. Miriam shook her head. Then you better move fast. Because if Otunba finds out before you do. She let the words hang. Laurel already knew the answer. She would be dead. The nightclub Pulse 42 was packed with Lekki's high rollers. Deep bass vibrated through the air, but Laurel had no time for distractions. She walked past the dancers, ignoring the stares, heading straight for the VIP section. 2 massive bouncers blocked her path. Mr. Chucks isn't seeing visitors. Laurel smirked. Tell him Laurel of Lekki is here. He'll change his mind. One of them spoke into a mic seconds later. The door opened. Inside, Chucks sat on a leather couch, a gold chain glinting against his dark skin. He looked up, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. Well, well. Look who survived the jungle. Laurel didn't sit. You have something that belongs to me. Chucks leaned back, amused. The ledger. That's my insurance policy now. Laurel's pulse spiked. Otunba wants it. Chucks chuckled. Otunba wants a lot of things. But here's the real question, Laurel. What are you willing to trade? Laurel's fight for survival is getting even more dangerous. I'll continue with the next set of intense scenes. Let me know if you want any plot twists added. Laurel's fingers tightened into fists as Chucks leaned forward, enjoying the power shift. You always were ambitious, he said, swirling his drink. But ambition without leverage. That's suicide. Laurel forced a smirk. And you think you have all the leverage? Chucks raised a brow. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. If I walk out of here without the ledger, Otunba comes for both of us. He doesn't like loose ends. Chuck studied her, his smirk faltering. She had struck a nerve. Give me the ledger, she pressed. And I'll make sure Otunba doesn't find you. Chucks let out a low chuckle. You talk big, Laurel. But you forget, I like to gamble. He snapped his fingers. One of his men placed a gun on the table between them. Let's play a game, Chuck said. One bullet in the chamber. You pull the trigger once. If you survive, the ledger is yours. Laurel's breath hitched. Russian roulette. The room spun, but she forced herself to stand tall. She had no choice. She picked up the gun, exhaled, and pulled the trigger. Blick. Silence. Chucks let out a loud laugh, clapping. Laurel of Lekki, he said, impressed. You really do have big gods. He nodded at his men. Give her the damn ledger. Scene 14, The Ledger's Truth. Laurel sat in her car, hands shaking as she flipped through the pages of the ledger. It was worse than she thought. The names inside weren't just criminals. They were politicians, judges, oil tycoons. The entire power structure of Lagos was in this book. Then her heart stopped. Otunba's name was there. And under it, a transaction for a hitman. Laurel's fingers trembled as she read the details. The hit had been on her. Otunba had been trying to kill her for months. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. She had risked everything to bring him the ledger. But now she had the weapon to destroy him. Her phone buzzed. Otunba. I hope you have good news for me. Laurel's eyes darkened. She started typing. Meet me. We have business to discuss. She was no longer playing defense. It was time to end this game. A gold chain smirking as a woman holds a gun, sweat on her brow. Later, inside a luxury car, a woman flips through a ledger, her face transforming from shock to cold determination. The city lights reflect in her eyes as she plots her next move. Laurel now holds the ultimate weapon. But will she be able to outsmart Otunba? I'll continue with the next explosive scenes. Let me know if you want any twists added. Laurel arrived at Otunba's mansion, a fortress of power and wealth. She had barely stepped inside when two of his guards frisked her, checking for weapons. She had expected that. What they didn't know was that the real weapon, the ledger, was hidden in the cloud. Otunba sat in his grand office, his gold rings flashing under the chandelier light. He smiled as she entered, but there was something in his eyes, suspicion. Well, he asked, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Laurel slid a flash drive across the table. The ledger. Every name, every transaction. Otunba leaned forward, picking it up slowly. And you didn't keep a copy. She forced a casual shrug. I just want my life back. Otunba chuckled. Smart girl. He plugged the drive into his laptop. The moment the files opened, his expression changed. His lips tightened. Laurel held her breath. Then he looked up at her and smiled. That's good, he said. Now one last thing. Laurel tensed as the door behind her opened. Jide walked in. Her blood ran cold. She had left him for dead. But now he stood beside Otunba, very much alive. And smiling. Surprised? Jide asked. Otunba leaned back. You see, Laurel, I never trusted you. That's why I had Jide follow you. Laurel swallowed hard. She had been outplayed. Otunba smirked. And now, my dear, your services are no longer needed. Jide reached for his gun. Laurel's mind raced. She had 1 second to act. As Jide raised his gun, she kicked the table, knocking the whiskey bottle into Otunba's face. Glass shattered. Chaos erupted. Laurel lunged for the laptop, hitting a button she had set up earlier. A file began uploading to the internet. Otunba roared, wiping blood from his face. "Stop her!" Jide fired. Laurel dove behind the desk as bullets shattered the air. She grabbed the penknife she had hidden in her bracelet and stabbed Jide's leg as he got close. He screamed, dropping his gun. Laurel grabbed it. She turned to Otunba, gun aimed. He froze. "Check your phone," she panted. Otunba's hands shook as he picked up his device. His face turned pale. The ledger had been sent to the press, the police, and every powerful man in Lagos. It was over. Laurel smirked. "I never play a game I can't win." Otunba's world collapsed around him. Laurel walked out, stepping into the warm Lekki night. She was finally free. The news hit Lagos like a thunderstorm. By morning, every major newspaper and blog was exposing the names in the ledger. Social media was on fire. Powerful men were scrambling. Police raids were happening across the city, and the streets of Lekki were buzzing with fear and excitement. Otunba was finished. Laurel sat in her penthouse, watching it all unfold on the news. The police had raided Otunba's mansion. He had vanished. Some said he fled the country. Others whispered that someone had silenced him before he could talk. She sipped her wine, knowing one thing. He was never coming back. A knock on her door made her pause. She reached for her gun, then checked the peephole. "Miriam." Laurel opened the door cautiously. Miriam stepped in, her expression unreadable. "You really did it," she said. Laurel smiled. "I told you. I don't lose." Miriam hesitated. "Then why don't you look happy?" Laurel exhaled. The truth was, she didn't feel victorious. She had won the battle, but she had also made enemies she couldn't see yet. And in Lekki, enemies never stayed quiet for long. A week later, Laurel was driving through Lekki when she noticed something strange. A black SUV was following her. She took a sharp turn. The SUV followed. Her heart pounded. Otunba was gone, but someone else had taken his place. She parked at an abandoned street, gripping the gun in her purse. The SUV stopped behind her. The back door opened. Jide stepped out. Laurel's stomach twisted. He was supposed to be dead. Jide smirked. "You didn't think it was over, did you?" Laurel's pulse spiked. She had exposed the powerful men in Lagos, but that didn't mean the game was over. It meant a new game was just beginning. She squared her shoulders, meeting Jide's gaze. "I never lose," she said. Jide chuckled. "We'll see about that." Jide leaned against the black SUV, arms crossed, his smirk taunting. "You thought killing Otunba ended the game?" he asked. "Lekki doesn't work that way." Laurel tightened her grip on the gun inside her purse. "You're wasting my time, Jide." He laughed. "I'm saving your life." Laurel frowned. "How?" Jide stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The men Otunba worked for. The real bosses. They're watching you. They don't care about the ledger. They care about who replaces him." Laurel's blood ran cold. She had thought exposing Otunba destroyed the system. But the truth was worse. It had created a vacuum. And now someone had to fill it. Jide smirked. "I took his seat, Laurel. And I'm offering you a choice. Stand with me or be hunted like a rat." Laurel exhaled slowly. If Jide was telling the truth, she was in more danger than she thought. But could she trust him? Laurel stared at Jide. He was powerful now, but she had spent her life fighting men like him. "I don't follow orders," she said. Jide chuckled. "Who said anything about following? I'm offering you a partnership." He smirked. "Then why does it sound like a threat?" Jide stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because it is." Laurel's heartbeat slowed. Her instincts screamed at her to pull the trigger. But then he added, "If you don't take my hand, someone else will. And when they do, they won't offer you a choice." Laurel weighed her options. She could fight and run forever, or she could step into power herself. Her lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. "If we do this," she said, "I don't play second to anyone." Jide grinned. "Then let's make history." They shook hands. In that moment Laurel knew. Lekki had a new queen. And this was only the beginning. A woman and a man stand face to face in a dimly lit alley. Tension thick between them. A powerful handshake seals a deal that will change Lekki forever. The city skyline glows behind them, hinting at the power they are about to seize. Laurel stood in the middle of an abandoned warehouse, her pulse steady as the man on his knees begged for his life. He had betrayed her. His name was Femi, one of Otunba's old informants who had tried to sell her out to a rival gang. Now he was tied up, his face swollen from Jide's interrogation. "Laurel, please," Femi gasped. "I swear I didn't mean." Laurel raised a hand, silencing him. This was her test. Jide watched from the shadows. "It's your call," he said. "Show them you're serious." Laurel had never killed with her own hands before. But she had come too far to hesitate now. She picked up the gun, aimed, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed. Blood splattered. Femi collapsed. The warehouse fell silent. Jide smirked. "Now they'll respect you." Laurel exhaled. She had crossed the line. There was no turning back. That night, Laurel sat in her penthouse, staring at the Lagos skyline. She didn't feel powerful, she felt trapped. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number, meet me. You'll want to hear this." Laurel frowned. The message was followed by an address, a luxury hotel in Ikoyi. She didn't like games, but something told her this wasn't an ordinary meeting. She arrived at the hotel's private lounge, where a man in a sharp navy suit sat waiting. He was older, with an air of authority. "You're bolder than I expected," he said, sipping his drink. Laurel sat across from him. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Call me Chief Martins. I used to work with Otunba. Now I want to work with you." Laurel's stomach twisted. She had just stepped into Otunba's old throne, and already the wolves were circling. Chief Martins leaned forward. "The question is, Laurel, do you want to rule Lekki or Lagos itself?" Laurel's heartbeat slowed. This was no longer just about survival. It was about domination. And she had a choice to make. The game has just begun. Laurel thought she had won, but true power is never given, it's taken. Should she accept Chief Martin's deal? Or is she walking into a bigger trap? Do you want to continue with Big Babes of Lekki 3, where Laurel learns the cost of ruling Lagos? Me no. You said. Continue. ChatGPT said. Big Babes of Lekki 3. The cost of power continued. Laurel is no longer just a survivor. She is a queen in a kingdom built on blood, lies, and ambition. But power comes with enemies. And in Lekki, the most dangerous threats are always the ones you never see coming. Laurel studied Chief Martins, her mind racing. He wasn't just some street boss. He was a kingmaker, the kind of man who pulled strings behind the scenes. "You want me to rule Lagos?" she asked, voice steady. Martins smiled. "You're already halfway there." He slid a folder across the table. Laurel opened it and froze. Inside were photos, documents, bank records, proof that some of the richest and most powerful men in Lagos were dirty. Some of them were even listed in the ledger she had exposed. Martins tapped the folder. These men. They're afraid of you. They know you have teeth. Laurel looked up. And what do you want in return? Martins sipped his whiskey. Loyalty. He smirked. I don't do blind loyalty. Martins chuckled. Smart girl. But if you want to stay in power, you'll need someone like me. Laurel leaned back. This was no longer a street fight. This was high-level politics, backroom deals, and silent wars. She had a decision to make. Laurel left the meeting with her mind spinning. She needed time to think. But as soon as she stepped into her car, her phone rang. Jide. What? She answered. His voice was tense. Where are you? Laurel frowned. Why? Because you're being played, Jide said. Martins doesn't want to help you. He wants to own you. Laurel smirked. And what, you suddenly care? Jide exhaled sharply. Look, I don't like you, but I respect you. If you take his deal, you're no longer your own boss. You become a puppet. Laurel's fingers drummed on the steering wheel. She had fought too hard to be controlled. But Martin's offer was tempting. With his connections, she could take everything. Jide's voice softened. If you want to rule Lekki, do it. But don't let a man like Martins hold the leash. The call ended. Laurel sat in the car, staring at the city lights. She had the power. Now she just had to decide how to use it. The war for Lagos has begun. Does Laurel take Martin's deal and gain ultimate power? Or does she carve her own path, knowing it could make her enemies even more dangerous? Laurel stands at a crossroads. Take Chief Martin's offer and rule under his control, or reject him and risk everything. But power is a dangerous drug, and the deeper she goes, the harder it is to escape. To see how this story unfolds, like, share and subscribe to the channel, and right where you are watching from, only on African Tales by DeFloras.